Good evening. This is a very radical venture. 3 poets in one night. Strap in. We're going for a ride. I want to just get some expressions of gratitude to Ginger Merkinson, the elegant and fierce Ginger, and Travis Denton, and Thomas Lux for his support over the years, and also for being a model of artistry, and a model for an advocate of poetry. Again, this is very, very radical to be having a night like this, particularly when there's so much in my mind and from my worldview that that has us not validate. So much is going on right now that doesn't validate the interior self and the life of the mind. So I want to begin with poems. I'm going to read poems from Leaving Saturn, and then some new poems, and then poems from the new book, Hoops. I grew up in Philadelphia, and most of the poems in Leaving Saturn are about that experience. Very vividly, I remember a kid slightly older than me who didn't drive a car, but walked around like he was driving a car. He made engine noises and jerked his body and that sort of thing, and did like that. And there were, it was a source of amusement for all of us, but particularly the girls who would ask for a ride. And he would pretend to park the car and, like a nice gentleman, get out and open the door for them. No one got in. No one got in. Some kind of crazy. It doesn't matter if you can't see Steve's Corvette, turquoise-colored plush purple seats, gold-trimmed rims that make little stars in your eyes as if the sun is kneeling, kissing the edge of sanity, like a Baptist preacher stroking the dark underside of God's wet tongue. He can make you believe it's there. His scuffed wingtips, ragged, shuffling concrete, could be 10-inch Firestone wheels. His vocal cords fake an 8-cylinder engine that wags like a dog's tail as he shifts gears. Imagine Steve, moonstruck, cool, turning right onto Ridge Avenue, arms forming arcs, his hands a set of stiff C's overthrowing each other's rule, his left body and head snapping back, pushing a stick shift into fourth, whizzing past Uncle Sam's pawn shop, past the stop and go. Only he knows his destination, his limits. Can you see him? Imagine Steve, moonstruck, cool, parallel parking between a Pacer and a Pinto. Obviously the most hip, backing up, head over right shoulder, one hand spinning as if polishing a dream. And there's Tina, wanting to know what makes a man tick, wanting a one-way trip to the stars. We, the faithful, never call him crazy, crack-brained, just a little touched. It's all he ever wants, a car, a girl, a community of believers. My barber in my old neighborhood cut my hair for a very long time, since I was about 3. And in college, I left the neighborhood, but I would go back to him, and he would share stories of other friends who hadn't gone to college and chose a different path, and that was the path of selling drugs or being a gangbanger. And each time I went back, I saw something in him change. And the other thing to know about this poem is that as kids, we had a wonderful rumor about this barber, which was that he never threw hair away. He just scooped it up and put it in jars and put it in the back of his shop. Mr. Pate's barbershop. I remember the room in which he held the blade to my neck and scraped the dark hairs foresting a jawline, stacks of ebonies and jets, clippings of black boxers, Joe Frazier, Jimmy Young, Jack Johnson. The color television bolted to a ceiling like the one I watched all night in the waiting room at St. Joseph's while my cousin recovered from gunshots. I remember the old Coke machine, a water fountain by the door, how I drank the summer of '88 over and over from a paper cone cup and still cannot quench my thirst. For this was the year funeral homes boomed, the year Mr. Pate swept his own shop, for he had lost his best little helper to crossfire. He suffered, like most barbers suffered, quietly. His clippers humming so loud, he forgot Ali's lightning left jab, his love for angles, for carpentry, for baseball. He forgot everything and would never be the same. I remember the way the blade gleamed fierce in the fading light of dusk, and a reflection of myself panned inside the razor's edge, wondering if I could lay down my pen, close up my ledgers, my journals, if I could undo my tie and take up barbering, where months on end a child's head would darken at my feet and bring with it the uncertainty of tomorrow. Like Mr. Pate, gathering clumps of fallen hair at the end of a day in short, delicate wisps as though they were the fine findings of gold dust he'd deposit in a jar and place on a shelf, only to return Saturdays collecting as an antique dealer collects, growing tired, but never forgetting someone has to cherish these tiny little heads. Two things I wanted to be growing up. I was an MC and a break dancer. So much so that I asked this guy to teach me. And my barter was to teach him algebra. Rock the body body. One summer night, I learned the art of breakdancing from a guy I'd only known as Moon in exchange for algebra lessons on Mondays. A member of the Pop-Along Kids, Moon taught me how to flick my wrist and make a wave. Check out the electric boogie, he said, and worked like a robot. One hand extended, the fingers curling and uncurling as the arm joints and shoulders in one fluid motion followed each other like butterflies. I half watched, trying to mimic the simple placement of feet, but mainly I thought of all the girls that would soon form a circle as I created illusions with my body. Okay. So I'm living half the week in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and driving 3 hours up to Vermont. And I'm missing my family, so I'm writing a series, and my wife. So I'm writing love poems, which is strange for me. Fever. Had I possessed the poise to kick aside my faraway thirst for mornings, or the wide solo in the listening glass emptied of speech, had I possessed the incorruptible sermons of window panes, had I danced a little more in the lush inscriptions of your gaze, I, who believe in the fauna of dreams, in the hand that tunes a guitar, in the will of pages, might have journeyed to you like ash and abandoned all my fires and named the epic over your shoulders and seized your tumble-down rapture. When you go away. When you go away, I stand by a water cooler all day, a brooding Raskolnikov, a hopeful Pecola. When you go away, a chain of bones in one finger slows into its subway stop. I no longer eat Thai, and no memory, no winter gardens to separate beauty from silence. All the trees in me horizontal. When you go away in spring, the sadness of melting snow is like a film in daylight. I wind back its terrible truths, flooding my emptiness. When you go away, I'm mauled, torn, my ferocious, my wolf. It's not a love poem. I'll be honest, I don't know what this is, but I love the lyricism. I love the sound of it. Towers. I could give your palace more glass shine, facing eastward every year without knowing. And no, it's not convincing waking in fog and rain and seeing everything. After many springs, the streets lose their grief and the people are nameless. I invented their hunger for the sake of invention. Despositio, elocutio, memoria, etc. Take me in the wind. I am the son of tenderness. Soon disaster breaks and bans in the lonely, ever lonely Friday nights. Their pain swirls about like an eye wall we run away from. I'm happy to read this poem because Frank Bedard just talked about my name, Major Jackson, and asked me how did I get that name. And I've attempted on a number of occasions to write about it, but nothing would come. But as I was writing this book, I recalled the fact that I had a teacher in 4th grade, somewhere between the holidays and the New Year, who came back as a substitute teacher and had the task of pronouncing everyone's name on the roll, which she butchered and just couldn't do it, actually. And my friends, we grew up, we were born in the late 60s, early 70s. And so our parents named us after African kings and queens. And she had a hard time pronouncing those names. And so she came back the next day and renamed us all after French painters. It's a true story. Urban Renewal 17. What of my 4th grade teacher at Reynolds Elementary, who weary after failed attempts to set to memory names strange and meaningless as grains of dirt around the mouthless mountain caves at Bahrain, Karai, Tariq, Shaniqua, Amari, Aisha, nicknamed the entire class after French painters, whether boy or girl. Beginning, behold, the beginning of sentient, formless life. And so my best friend Darnell became Marcel, and TT was Brock, and Stacey James was Fragonard, and I, Edouard Chalamont. The time has come to look at these signs from other points of view. Days passed in activity before I corrected her, for Edouard was Austrian and painted the Black Chief in the palace in 1878 to the question whether intelligence exists. All of Europe swooned to Venus of Willendorf outside her tongue, yet of it in textbooks. Herodotus tells us of the legend of Siswasret, Egyptian, colonizer of Greece, founder of Athens. What's in a name? Sagas rise and fall in the orbs of jump ropes. Hannibal grasped a Roman monkey bar on history's rung, and the mighty heroes at recess lay dead in woe on the imagined battlefields of Halo. This book features a letter to the poet Gwendolyn Brooks, and I just want to finish up with 2 sections from the letter. The letter is very much inspired by a letter that W.H. Auden wrote to Lord Byron, and actually it's called Letter to Byron. And after reading that, I was deeply inspired to attempt my own letter. And much like Auden's poem, it's somewhat of a travelogue. So many of the sections of this poem were written while I was traveling. One such place was Franconia, New Hampshire, where Robert Frost lived after he came back from New England. And there at the Robert Frost place, they asked the poet to stay for the summer and write. And I was very happy to do this, except for they didn't tell me that they had a big old sign on the highway that says, the Frost Museum, exit here, you know. So at all times of the day, people would come and peek into the house and find me. And this is a letter to Brooks, a section of it. I've arisen to dawn at the Frost Place. I've jerry-rigged a desk by the window overlooking a trail. I'm the new face of mountain poetry. Tourists come and go, off hours though, interrupting my ego's pursuit, a lasting chamber for my soul. The worst is when I munch a bowl of frosted flakes, pacing in my briefs, and a right curious family peers in. They visor their foreheads, disbelief creeps across their face. I'm the old man's ghost. As we're 26 beforehand, summers we come to haunt the porch, as Billy Matthews put it, to scorch off morning fog, which I poke with my pen and swirl. It gathers cobwebby like round a thought I curl, then right to its end. The broccoli-topped trees I see down straight after that to Route 93. Tourists abound this time of year. I wish I could install on deck, I've not the word for what they're called, one of those standing boardwalk binoculars requiring a quarter that opens a shutter. Then suddenly the ocean's particulars are as intimate as your face. Buttery midday light they'd see. My mind sputtering to complete these stanzas, stacked like bricks, or mornings when I am my own exhibitionist, catching me in the mirror dancing nude, or toweling my hands, or stirring brown sugar in my tea. In any case, my back rudely to their probing eyes, wide as arugula. To protect my chi, I'd hang a sign, beggars disallowed, or peace God, or shh, poet at work, to really back them off. Beware of jerk. And I'll end with this last section to Gwendolyn Brooks. When you have forgotten to bring into play that fragrant morsel of rhetoric, crisp as autumnal air, when you have forgotten, say, sunlit corners, brick full of skyline, row homes, smokestacks, billboards, littered rooftops, and wondered what bread wrappers reflect of our hunger, when you have forgotten wide brim hats, Sunday backseat leather rides, in church, the door lock like a silver cane, the broad back swing, or the great moan deep churning, and the shimmer flick of flat sticks, the lurch forward, skip, hands up, aliasque drop, when you have forgotten the meaningful bop, hustlers in their care what may, blasé, ballet, and flight, when you have forgotten scruffy yards, miniature escapes, the way laundry lines strung up sag like shortened smiles, when you have forgotten the fishman barking his catch in inches up the street. I've got porgies, I've got trout, fishman, or his scoop and chain scale, his belief in shad and amberjack. When you have forgotten Ajax and tin pails, blue crystals frothing on marble front steps Saturday mornings, or the garden of old men playing checkers, the curbs whitewashed like two lines out to the burbs, or the hopscotch squares painted new in the street, the pitter-patter of feet landing on rhymes. How do you like the weather? Girls, all in together. Girls, January, February, March, April. The jump ropes' portentous, looming their great aching love, blooming when you have forgotten packs of grape-flavored now-laters, the squares of sugar flattening on the tongue, the elation you felt reaching into the corner store jar, grasping a handful of blow pops, candy bars with names you didn't recognize but came to learn, all the turf battles, all the war games. When you have forgotten popsicle stick races along the curb and hydrant water fights, then retrieve this letter from your stack I've sent by clairvoyant post, and read it by light, for it brought me as much longing and delight. This week's Father's Day, I have a long ride to Philly. I'll give this to Gramps, then head to Black Lily. Thank you.